Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. It's Nia. I am logging on from the West Coast, about to start this week's Friday feature. Today is Friday, February 9th, and our guest today is Ilhan Abdullahi, and she is a wonderful a Muslim sister who is I'm very close with. Pardon my tongue tightness. I'm very close with because we worked together on our inaugural screenwriting fellowship. And I'm so excited to bring her on because she was recently honored as noteworthy, one of the storytellers in her town. And actually, I'm trying to see if we can pull her in so that she can tell you all about it. Just 1 second. Technology, yay. So hopefully she'll be able to log in. I just sent her a message. But welcome to our Friday feature, February the 9th. Today's guest is Ilhan Abdullahi. My name is Nia Malika Dixon. I am the founder of Black Muslim Girl Fly. And what we are doing every Friday this year, our goal is to host a Black Muslim woman who is making strides in her business, in her creative endeavors, with her goals, and just to have a conversation about what's important to her. And that's literally why I started Black Muslim Girl Fly, which is to empower and uplift Black Muslim girls and women. And this is one of the ways that I think is not only fun, but also very important, because young girls and young Muslim women out there can see Black Muslim Girl Fly in effect, like literally in the flesh. So far, we have had our board members come on the first few weeks of this year, starting in January. We had Malika A. Shabazz, who is an independent filmmaker. We also had Haja Kamila Shoaib, who is one of our board members as well, but an entrepreneur who launched her business, Love is Always the Subject. We also had our board chair, Marguerite Aziza Hill, and she spoke about what it's like running a nonprofit, Muslim Arc. And last week we had Nadira P, and she's a stand-up comedian and another of my close friends, I like to say, because when I first started Black Muslim Girl Fly, she was one of the first women that I profiled for our website, and it was an honor to have her coming on and talking about her career and her progress since then, which was back in 2018. And Ilhan is just now entering the room. I can see and have her talk about her endeavors with regard to her storytelling. So far, we've had careers in nonprofit sector, we've had careers in filmmaking, in stand-up, and here is another storyteller, Ilhan. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Hi, walaikum assalam. Thanks for having me. I was trying to figure out IG Live. I was like, I don't know how
No
this works. This is my first time.
problem.
Thank you
No
for
problem.
having me.
Wonderful.
Hello, hello, beautiful.
It's been so long since I've seen you in person. The last time that we got together, it was through the fellowship, the screenwriting fellowship,
Oh my God.
which, yeah, I'm gonna have you talk a little bit about that. But before we do, I want everybody to get to know you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, what you're doing now.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum. And I watch this every Friday, so I'm like, the people that you've had come on here, I'm like, oh, mashallah, I should be everyone's bestie. Um, I love it. I love it. So my name is Ilhan Abdullahi. I live in Vancouver, which is the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples, the indigenous territories. And I've been living here almost my whole life. My parents, my family came here like the early 90s, I would say, I know we came here in the early 90s. I'm like, I think it was. And yeah, we've been here ever since then. I've spent a couple years in Toronto. I tried to claim it, didn't work out, came back to Vancouver. And then I lived in Alberta for a little bit, came back here. My roots, my community, I would say a lot of it is in Vancouver. And I know some phenomenal folks. And I see Hala is another person that we got to get in this community, inshallah. Her name is Poet FM Real. I never know how to say it, but she's an incredible organizer here as well in Vancouver, and poet, and She's doing amazing things. She's a Black Muslim girl that's fly. So
Excellent.
she's, yeah. I hope I answered your question.
No, no, perfect, perfect. And then that leads us into, when did Black Muslim Girl Fly into your life?
Oh my God, I think so. I've been following your work for a while, and I think it was around the time where East of LA or La
East
Brea.
of La Brea, yeah.
I remember that came out around the pandemic times, and I was like, what? Who is this network of amazing Black Muslim women creating these shows and writing? And so I heard about Black Muslim Girl Fly, and then I started to follow it, and then I followed you, and then I just got connected to more and more incredible like Black Muslim women doing amazing things. And so I would say it was like 2019, 2020. When I learned more about this network, and you were doing so many things to try to build community, even though we had to do things virtually and shift. So I remember coming to a lot of like the film festival that you did for Black Muslim Girl Fly, the different writing fellowships that you had, and then through there I got more and more familiar, and alhamdulillah, I found this community.
Wonderful. Now that lets me jump right into your storytelling, because like I said earlier, recently you were
Yeah.
recognized being a noteworthy storyteller. Wonderful, which I'm so proud of. And because I've read your work when
You
you
know
were
it.
with us through the fellowship.
So,
So tell us a little bit about your experience writing, you know, some of the obstacles that you've come up against, and then also some of the things that have helped you along the way to get to the point of where you're recognized.
right. Yeah. So I think with my writing, I've always wanted to get into film, but I felt like it was such an exclusive space to get into. So I've always found it to be very like hard to get into, but I was like, you know what, let me just figure out how to do writing and just like meet people and just do a lot of community building. And maybe that could help me, inshallah, one day get into the space. So I spent a lot of my early years like going to improv classes and doing these like random community centered writing. So I didn't even question who the instructor was. I'm like, anybody who wants to help me to learn that can help me. And so I got more into writing in that space and learning a little bit more about the craft of storytelling and all that. And then from there, I started to take it more seriously. I would say about like 10 years ago, of like, okay, there's all these interesting stories that I have in my head. There's also a lot of interesting things I've experienced just being a Black Muslim living in Vancouver, and a lot of funny instances and stories that I have. So I'm like, I really want to write this. I just don't know how to get into the world. So my goal was to just keep writing. And then maybe one day, inshallah, I'll meet a collective of rad, amazing, independent filmmakers. And then I could hopefully join that community in that space. Um, so that's kind of how I got into it. And then I think it was like around, when was this? Like 2019. I finished writing my first feature script. And I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I make this? It's entirely around the Somali community in Canada. But I was like, there's other stories that I also want to tell alongside community. So let me find communities that I could really get into. And so that's again back to the timeline of Black Muslim Girl Fly. I started to see a lot of things on Instagram, and I know it's majority based in America, and I'm like, oh my God, the cool people are all there. I'm like, how do I get into the American side of things? And so around that time, I saw you do a call out for this fellowship
Right.
of working with different Muslim, but also non-Muslim writers
Mm-hmm.
and,
Yeah.
and filmmakers that were looking to really craft their storytelling. And that's how I met you. And I think I came in with my script. It was for a show called This Is My Life. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, which revolved around like just like the complexities, but the beauty of living in a city that's not predominantly Black or Muslim, and the funny things that we experience, the joy that we experience. And so I started working with you in that fellowship to help me really write that first pilot episode. I remember that so vividly because I was learning the beat sheet mechanisms through you. I was like, save the cat. What cat nonsense
Really.
over why even a cat? I still don't get the title. But we started working together, and that structure really helped me think through my other projects, my scripts. How can I use this to do that? So you played a huge role in that. So jazakallah khairan for that mentorship.
Alhamdulillah. I know, yeah. The reason why I did that fellowship was because that sentiment that you expressed, you were looking for some way to cultivate the talent that you have. You had these stories to tell, but it was very difficult to connect with people who are on the same wavelength, who could help you do that. And because we know that this Hollywood system is very it's full of gatekeeping, and
Oh
there's
my
a
God.
status quo, and like, you know, we're not even going to talk about
Yeah.
that, you know. But basically there are basics that will help you lay down the foundation, like you said, and you go from there. And I was so pleased with the diversity of the people who were in the fellowship with us. Like you said, not everybody was Muslim. I remember sweetheart, a friend of mine who's now starring in her own series. She played Aisha on East of La Brea. And Jeffrey Maya had joined us in the fellowship as well. And just watching each of you go through the process of developing your story and building these worlds and making sure that your character arcs were fulfilling, but also making sure that the characters were authentic and representative of the story that you wanted to see, that reflected your experiences. And there were some sisters who were like from across the pond, and like you were in Canada, and then there were other folks from all different countries who were participating. And the thing that I felt like kept us together was the need to tell these stories. And I want to commend you for having the bravery to like be open and learning the ways to tell these stories and taking up that responsibility, because it's not easy. Like you were saying, you're going up against all of these obstacles in society that are just laid out there to stop us from reaching that goal of getting all these different variety of diverse stories out there. But you were recently recognized for your storytelling. So tell us about that, because that journey, I mean, those milestones of success are so important.
Yeah, just excited for even the opportunity to be able to share, and lots of learnings of like things I'm like, okay, this is not the way you do it, but then also like ways of doing. And I think the biggest thing for me, wallahi, was community. Like I think especially with like independent filmmaking, I'm like, you got to find the people that will ride with you, like your tribe, finding those people that are like, I have these skills, how can I lend them to you, and then vice versa. Right. So that's kind of like how I got into that space. And so I think since we last talked, I ended up working on 2 short films. One of them is called Dreamers. So it's a documentary that follows these 2 Somali refugee boys that I used to work with when I was a youth worker. And I was so, mashallah, stunned, because these kids were like, no one's going to stop me. I'm going to be a professional soccer star and watch me do it. And I was like, oh my God. And the whole time I'm like, my dream is to be a filmmaker. And I'm here like, I can't do it. And watching these kids do what they do. So I went through this program called Being Black in Canada, where they support first-time emerging filmmakers to make their first documentary. And that's kind of what I went through to do the documentary, which I love. But then my heart was always around narrative storytelling and like comedy. I love sketch comedy and short comedies and things like that. And so I was like, okay, I met some amazing cinematographers. I met some curious souls. Next up is to gather people that will help me make this short film. So the next one was called Not For Us. And this is a camping comedy. It followed the story of my sisters. And it was a hot mess of a camping trip. The first time we went camping in our 20s, we're like, let's make this thing happen. Our cousin came with us. One of us slept outside. We couldn't figure out ends. We had no food. It was just so, we never went back to the woods after that. So we're thinking about it. We're like, that would be a really awesome story. So there was a call out coming out through StoryHive. And they fund local content creators and filmmakers, and they give you a grant that you don't owe back, which is always a blessing, right? Because like with a lot of funds, it's like you kind of have to owe them back with like equity or something, and you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna make money from this film. Whereas this one was more of like, here's a grant, we trust you, make this vision. They give you mentors through the program, and alhamdulillah, that helped us a lot. So I co-wrote it with my sister, because we did it together. I'm like, let's just do this together and see what happens. And then so I started to reach out to people that I met through just like community, like through film festivals, through friends, through table reads. And I was like, hey, we have this money. We want to be able to pay everybody for their labor. I mean, 20,000 isn't a lot for a film. Like, like we had to get a generator. We were filming outside. So a lot of the costs went to that as well. But we were able to bring a collective of like these dreamers, and like everybody was just like, we just want to support this film. It seems like a really cool story. And then from there we kind of build. We had no idea what was going to come out of this camping film, because we're like, us Black people, we get it. I don't know, have you been camping?
Yes.
An avid camper. What's your
Okay, so like I've done it before, but I'd rather glamp than can.
Okay, yes.
I'm not the rough it kind of gal. No,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
feel you. I feel you. I tried it once. I was like, okay, maybe I'll try it with experience. I'm never gonna go with my sisters.
Oh
Is what I
no.
learned. No, I don't trust any of them. I don't trust me.
Mm-mm. Wow.
Yeah, so I think we ended up just like wanting to create the story together, and everyone that was like part of it, like either they were like avid campers and they're like, this is a really funny story, like we want to help you guys make it. I brought on a director who's a brilliant mind, Pranita Killa. He's a friend of mine, and we talked about, so we exchanged stories about like our own camping experiences. And he had this wild story about going to the mountains as a kid and being I think it was a Boy Scout, and surviving in the snow. And so everybody came with like their own lived experiences, which was so fun to do it together. But everybody was just like an indie filmmaker. Like they were like, hey, I do grip, I do cinematography, I do this. Let's come together and help make this film come to life. And yes, it was one of heart and passion and just like really awesome people. And that's what I've learned from the process, was just like community is always what it comes down to. And the biggest reflection I have is, you know, a lot of people that want to get into film, even I was there too, was like, we want to get to the top. It's like, how do I get to Netflix? How do I get there? I have a great story. I know one of these big streaming or production companies will want it, but it's like, how do we start with the people that are like horizontal, like within the same range as us? Who is in our community? Who has skills? Who has equipment? How do we build
Exactly.
together? And that was like the biggest thing that I learned from the process.
That's wonderful. Like you said, it all comes back to community, and it all comes back to making sure you're all on the same page. And the fact that you brought everyone together to share their stories was definitely a great way to make sure that everyone was all on the same page.
Yeah.
It's always good. Like whenever you have a great, like a project that you want
Mm-hmm.
to go further, there's a proverb that says, if you want to go further, you go together. If you want to go faster, you go by yourself. But if you want to go further, you go together. So that's definitely what I live by.
Yeah, totally. I was gonna turn the questions to you. I was like, how did you get into the film world? Like, tell me your.
Honestly, my story could take a long time to talk, because the journey is always ups and downs, and it's never ending. It's still going on.
Yeah.
But the initial pull was that love of storytelling, and I never thought that I could do it. Listen, I was a single mom and I was a school teacher.
Oh wow.
I
Okay. Yeah.
And I loved teaching. I still love teaching. I'm still an educator at
Yeah.
heart. But I know that, and back then I knew that there are stories that deserve to be told that aren't given the same platform, that aren't given the same opportunity. And I wanted to like push the envelope. I wanted to throw my hat in the ring and say, listen, I have all these stories. Let's give it a chance. And when I got here to LA, it was just like an eye-opening um, experience where I had to realize, everybody's not on the same wavelength. It's not about storytelling for a lot of the folks in Hollywood. It's about money. And so that's the long story short.
But I love for like the community, wallahi, like a lot of like indie filmmakers, emerging filmmakers, even the folks that have made it and are still making all these arts, and like you're just bringing us all together. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really what it boils down to, building community, and storytelling brings everybody together. And
absolutely.
my favorite ayah from Quran is that Allah, God has made us in all these nations and tribes so that we would learn from one another, to know one another. And to me, that means sharing our
Absolutely.
stories. That's literally what I interpret that ayah to mean. And it brings us all together. And
Mm. Oh,
Black Muslim Girl Fly was the way that I felt could definitely not only build community for women, girls who feel marginalized, but also give them the platform to share those stories, to change the narrative. That's why the film festival exists, and that's why the screenwriting fellowship existed. And
right.
um, I'm just so proud. Like,
Mm-hmm.
alhamdulillah, I never imagined that those little ideas would blossom into all of the fruit. And to have you here, like, Black Muslim Girl Fly means so much to so many different people now. And
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean to you? Like, how important is what do you think, the impact on the community at large for
Oh,
Black Muslim Girl Fly is?
love it. I'm just like, I remember 2019, I'm like, I want to get into this community, inshallah. Happy I'm a part of it. And I think it means so much. And I think the one thing that speaks to me. And every time I'm hearing the conversations that you have with the other folks that you've been chatting with, and the posts that you do and the initiatives that you have, is collectivism and centering joy. And like, I
Yeah.
think part of Blackness, right, is just like anytime we get together, there's good food, there's storytelling, there's laughing. You're laughing until you're wheezing, you got to run to the bathroom, that kind of laughing. And so I think of joy and like really uplifting each other, and none of this scarcity competing with each other, but it's like how do we all hold each other and value each other, and like that sisterhood that's a part of it. So that's what it screams at me, and I love it. Alhamdulillah. So thank you for like creating this space, and I think that's what Black Muslim Girl Fly means for me.
Alhamdulillah. And how do you embody that personally? Like, tell us a little bit more about like how you, in your family and your community in Canada, like what are you thinking when
Yeah,
you?
I could start with giving a shout out to my grandmother. She passed away a few years ago, Allah yarham. But when I think of Black Muslim Girl Fly, I honestly think of her and like the work that she has done just as like an elder. So we came in the 90s. I used to hang out with her a lot. She raised me. We
Mhm.
were both, I was younger. She didn't speak English. I didn't speak English. But we'd roam around the block. I don't know in what language, you tell me. But we would connect, and people loved her because she would make everybody laugh. And I started to think about the role of just Black women in general, and like matriarchs, and just always being there for everybody and caring for each other and uplifting each other. And then I saw that being passed down to my mother, who's mashallah an incredible woman. And then just seeing like how that, manifests in our communities as well. So I think for me, I'm like, okay, how do I carry on that what I've been taught, those values? And then for me, is it like it's building with the people in my community, it's building for the youth as
Right.
well. So like, in filmmaking and so many different spaces. I'm also in like academia, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
gatekeeping. So for me, like, okay, alhamdulillah, if I got into that, how do I make, that access? How do I bring in the folks from my community into these spaces, whether it's hosting storytelling sessions, whether it's bringing youth on film sets to learn, and like a free mentorship. Just come hang out, see what a film set is like, join our writing sessions, making all these things a little bit more accessible once we get into these spaces. So I think, and then centering joy, like
Yeah.
let's bring the happiness and the community vibes to like all the spaces that we're in. So I would say that's kind of how, inshallah, I'm hoping to bring that perspective.
No, but I get that from you. At like you ooze that, like definitely, and especially came through in your storytelling. I really enjoyed your yeah, and I hope to see that one day. Like,
Yeah, inshallah, I hope so.
inshallah. So, what do you think you would like to see from Black Muslim Girl Fly this year? What are you most excited about?
Ooh, oh my God. I'm excited for that festival. If it's going to be happening anytime soon.
Inshallah,
I,
this year.
inshallah, inshallah. And I would just love to like meet everybody in person. Like that's,
Mm.
I will come down to America. I would love to like have a space or a convening. I mean, if it's virtual, if it's online, but I love witnessing all that you're doing. So I think just seeing more of it happening and more spaces for us to connect and share and like have food together and just, yeah, be in each other's company.
Nadira said the same thing. She
Oh,
wants to have meetups, and I'm like, yes, let's see if we can make
yes,
this happen.
yes.
Inshallah, inshallah. And then, like, thinking about the Muslim community in general, it's really hard to put together these kinds of things, especially with COVID
Yeah.
now. But one thing that Nadira did bring up is that we have to put our money toward these kinds of things. Like we have to build our community up in ways that benefit us. What would you like to see more from the Muslim community at large that you think that we need to like improve or work on?
Ooh. I think exactly what Nadira was saying as well. I would echo that. And I think as well, like investing in spaces for youth and the younger folks to really be able to explore storytelling. Because every single one of our cultural backgrounds, like storytelling shows up, right? The way that lessons get passed down to us and that. So I would say like investing, whether it's like financially supporting Muslim filmmakers or creatives or youth, like what could that look like as well? So I would echo exactly what Nadira
I
mentioned.
definitely agree with you. Like
Uh,
making focus on the youth because they're the ones that are coming up behind us, and actually like going back to teaching them the basics of storytelling. Because that's something that that's not really taught as much anymore. I haven't been in the school system as of late, but when I was, the arts are like slim to none.
Oh,
And so like teaching basic storytelling skills is definitely something that will benefit our youth, because it not only teaches them how to communicate their own stories, but also it gives them self-empowerment. You know, you have to understand yourself in order to create a narrative that's, you know, that's how you create your voice when you're telling stories. You know, you have to understand yourself,
exactly.
and that, I think, is definitely connected to empowerment, and that will definitely build up our
Mhm.
social capital,
Exactly.
our social capital.
100%.
Yeah.
And even like for the youth as well, but even for the other folks too that are like, okay, it's not too late to dream. I could still start at any age. Like, do we have more fellowships that are not expensive that we can kind of support? And then, so if you're subsidizing costs, and how are we investing in the instructors and the teachers? And like for yourself, when you're hosting that, it's like, how are you being compensated for your time, for like lending your skills and your knowledge and just doing that from the goodness of your heart? But like, how do you get recognized for that as well from the most? Yeah.
You know, I think we got a long way to go for that, unfortunately. I really do. But the argument that I would make is that that's how we learn Islam. Like, we learn from Allah through stories in the Quran. All the stories of all the prophets, you know, the narration of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how we learn how to implement the edicts and the rulings, and you know how we govern our livelihood comes from storytelling. So yeah, I would definitely argue with those in charge that, you know, would say that it's frivolous. It's, unfortunately, no, it's not. It's very, very necessary.
I mean,
I appreciate that. So what is next for you? What do you think is on the horizon that you want us to know more about, so that when we're following you, we're looking for it?
yeah. Oh my God. Inshallah, like one of the things I've been working on, it's the same project I've been working on for 10 years that I'm like, one day I'm getting closer and closer every day, inshallah. So this is the film called Lifeline. So this is like the feature film that I wrote years back, and it's kind of been collecting dust, and I was like, okay, I need to get back into it. This is the one that's based on the Somali refugee community in Canada, and it's a drama. And so the most recent year, I was able to take part of the Whistler Screenwriters Lab. So the Whistler Film Festival Screenwriters Lab. I entered with the script. I was able to work through it. I was able to get a lot of like amazing mentorship. Shout out to Ruth and all the folks, and Dennis and Shelly that helped me with that, and Tarek and my cohort. And so the next step for me is like, I have the script that I feel really good about. I have the community that's really excited about it. It's always that battle with funding. So it's kind of like, okay, like inshallah, like within this year, I'll keep trying to see what happens. But that's the project that it's in my heart. I really want to be able to showcase it and build it with community. So that's next up. So inshallah, you'll see that film in a couple years time. TBD with
That
fun.
sounds great. That sounds really cool. And is there a way that you can create a proof of concept so that you can elicit more funding,
That's
perhaps?
what I'm thinking. I'm curious. I gotta pick people's brains, because I'm like, what could a proof of concept look like? So people can get an idea of what the feel of it, as well as a
Short film?
yeah. So that's what I was chatting about with my mentor Ruth about. Like, let's do a short film version of it, show that community and show funders this is what it could look like
Right.
at the feature. And then to get the funds for them, like, okay, do I have to do crowdsourcing? What does that look like? Yeah.
Now, there is a proof of concept fellowship that's going on right now that I can post and send you a link to, just so you can get an idea of what these programs are looking for. But also, you might still have time to submit your script, because I think the deadline is in March.
Oh.
So, and definitely like scroll through hashtags like indie filmmaking hashtags, and then also, if you like follow other filmmakers, they may share posts from other grants and programs that are available. So definitely keep your eye open for those kinds of things. And I, of course, I will definitely send them to you.
Okay, amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, because like that's where I get lost. I'm like, what are the resources? Is it only for Americans? Help us
No,
Canadians. So yeah.
it's for everybody. And then a lot of these programs are looking for female-centered stories. And then when you find niche programs that are like refugee-centered or immigrant-centered, you can definitely find ways to get funding. There was one program that I saw that was geared toward caretakers, and they were looking for short films about people who were in the caretaking position, and that way they were trying to debunk some of the negative connotations with being a caretaker or a caregiver. And there's so many different like filmmaking programs that are focused on things like mental health, because people want to change the narrative, and I'm
Yeah.
all for it.
Me too. Me too. I'm like, sign me up. Any way that I could support those ones too. I'm like, oh, we need to build collectively. And thank you for sharing that and like those putting those resources out there because I definitely haven't heard of them.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
coming up next, you're working on your feature film. You've got this award that you've just been recognized for. Anything else on the horizon in the next month or so?
That's all for now. That's all.
Okay.
But I'm so deeply curious about like meeting other creatives and Muslim filmmakers, Black Muslim filmmakers. So I think like if there's ever any events popping up, you might see me there, just like lurking in the background,
Well,
trying to.
inshallah, we're going to have some coming up with Black Muslim Girl Fly, so stay tuned for that.
I
I
will.
definitely, I want to take Nadira up on her suggestion. I want to take you up on your suggestion and have some real life meetups. But in the meantime, we might be able to do some Zooms, and you
Yeah.
can connect with other Black Muslim creatives. And if you are a Black Muslim woman who is in the entertainment industry or a creative, a writer, director, whether you work in a crew or whatever, drop us a link, drop us a DM, let us know, and we'll connect everybody with each other, because that's what BMG Fly is created for. Like you said, it's all about building community. It's all about building that sisterhood and making sure that we have opportunities to further our storytelling just as much as the next people.
I love it. I'm so here for it, and you will probably see some links popping in. So,
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Well, inshallah, next week we're going to have another Black Muslim Girl Fly. But in the meantime, follow Ilhan. If you want, you can put your handle in the comments. I believe it's at I am Ilhan.
yes.
And you can also find her websites underneath her bio. And inshallah, keep following us for more, because we're going to have more events coming up. And I'm definitely going to take you guys up on your suggestions, because this is all about uplifting us and our sisterhood. So,
I love it. I love it.
alhamdulillah. So, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you so much.
And
Yeah, thank you so much.
inshallah, we'll have more folks next week. Like I said, our goal is to have one Friday feature every Friday of the year. So if you know of other Black Muslim women or Black Muslim girls who would like to be featured, please let us know and let them know to get in touch with us. Right now, we're currently booked all the way up through April, but our goal is all the way through the end of the year. So inshallah, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bye. Walaikum salam.